The metals markets have been making the front pages of pretty much every single newspaper recently because of the heightened geopolitical risk of been pushing up prices. The headlines circle the big base and precious metals there. But what about the lesser known metals that have been moving up as well? Those very same markets are in heavy demand because of the rise in demand from new technology. Well, Christian Taylor-Wilkinson joins us now. He's the chief executive of Altona Rare Earths. Christian, thanks for your time today to take this market apart and explain more about what's happening. What's driving the rare earth demand at the moment?
Okay, good question. There are two things we need to look at, really. The sort of World COP26 meeting that took place last November, that was, I guess, a fantastic benchmark for rare earths, particularly because every government in the world set out their targets to abolish combustion engines on cars. And whilst the rare earth sector comprises of 17 individual metals, the most expensive ones, the key ones, the ones that people know about are these NdPr, the neodymium, the praseodymium. These are the two that are used predominantly to produce these super magnets that go into electric vehicles, and they're also used in quite high weights in wind turbines to drive the powertrains. So whilst electric vehicle has a battery, it also needs this permanent magnet to drive the wheels. So COP26, by setting these standards, has meant that the demand around the world for particularly these two metals has gone through the roof. So we're now seeing an all-time record price on the commodity markets for Nd and for PR. And I think that's further pushed in the current situation we're seeing in Ukraine, the fact that oil and gas, their prices have gone through the roof. So people are now looking with better clarity at alternative energy solutions. And obviously wind power relies heavily upon rare earths. So there are different factors at play here that are all benefiting the prices for rare earths. So it's a great time to be in the mining sector to try produce these key metals.
So the production process itself, is that energy intensive? Do you have to use a lot of oil and gas to get through the process to having taken it out of the ground to put it into something that is available and usable within this new sort of magnet sphere?
For Altona, it's not really an issue at the moment because we are fairly early stage with our exploration, but there are different types of extraction methods. The rare earths sit in different geographic formations. Sometimes they sit in rock, which will require the sort of traditional strip mining approach, which of course would be energy intensive. But then you can look at this other development, which is the predominance in China, where the metals sit in ionic clays, which is basically soil clay formations, which has been caused by extreme heavy weathering of the stone over millennia. And the process to extract those metals is incredibly simple. It's you know, no drilling, no blasting. You don't have to use heavy levels of acids and other chemicals to leach the metals out of the clay or the soil they're in. So that side is fairly light, I suppose, on the energy side. But you have to bear in mind you are transporting tons of material from the location where we mine it to wherever it's going to be processed. And currently, the only valid processing facilities are in China, which is interesting in itself, because part of what Altona was trying to do was set up an alternative to the supply stranglehold that China currently has on this market. But I'm hoping that when we do join the supply chain in sort of 3 to 4 years' time, there will be other processing facilities established. Pensana are trying to, or building one at the moment in East Yorkshire. And I think America and Australia are also looking at establishing, because the key thing here is, especially for the US, is to be able to build its own long-term reliable stream of rare earth metals, because they're so important, apart from in the electric vehicle market, in military applications as well.
Yes, of course, it's also keen for us as well in the West, I guess, to have our own sources of all this, and of course away from China. Explain to us how rare earths are. You give the impression, I think, in China that these things are readily available, they're easily taken out of the ground, and you said relatively inexpensive to process. But how rare around the world are rare earths?
Rare earths aren't rare at all. They are found in abundance across most geographic formations across the Earth's planet. The trick, like every mining operation, is to find them in a dense enough concentration that you can mine them economically. So with China, they have the abundance of ionic clay formations, which is why they're so far ahead of the game. But the reason why Altona chose Africa is blessed, I suppose is a great way of saying it, in sort of these carbonatite formations, which is the hard rock. It takes a long time to drill, but the rewards are great. And I think in recent years, maybe the last 10, 15 years, they've also discovered down the East Rift Valley of Africa, a number of ionic clay deposits as well. So that's one of the things that Altona will be looking at. So we think with our first asset, we found sufficient deposits, certainly enough for us to start our phase 2 drilling. And similarly, if you look at the other UK listed rare earth companies, they are in the same situation. So rare earths, not rare, but for economic purposes, difficult to mine.
I want to get into more detail about Altona and your situation in just a minute, but just to quickly go back again to one sort of general question about this sector. What's your expectation for the changing demand for these metals that you're hoping to dig out of the ground and supply to this specialized sector? I mean, we're talking here, any company in your position of so early stage, of course, you're looking well into the future. How are things likely to change, do you think, over the next few years for the demand of these sort of metals?
Well, demand for these critical metals I was talking about, neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, europium, some of the ones that are going in the renewable energies, that's only going to rise. There's currently a deficit in the supply chain for these metals. It's been widely reported that America is stockpiling rare earths, although they're stockpiling all 17 of them. And I think it's worth mentioning because rare earths, unlike other mining sectors, isn't such a well-known industry. So, some of the other metals in the sector are used for, quite banal things like polishing glass lenses or in the making of ceramics, and to help catalytic converters do the jobs. They're also using mobile phones and various other electrical items, everyday household items. So I don't think the demand for the rare earths that are used in those products or manufacturing will increase, but those that are used in the electric vehicle market, wind turbine, at the moment there is no alternative solution. There's no alternative material to replace the rare earths used in it. And if you can imagine a world by 2050 that is only going to be building electric vehicles, there has to be an incredibly long-term supply of these key rare earths. So the demand is only ever going to get higher. China could quite easily.
So, well, I was going to say, are they reclaimable? I mean, you're talking about mobile phones. Everybody's got a mobile phone these days. And how often do we change them? Once every couple of years, whatever. They go into a big stockpile somewhere. Can you reclaim rare earths from existing usage?
You can, and a lot of companies are starting to look at that. But if you think about the size of a mobile phone, you've probably got a few grams in it. If you look at an electric vehicle, it needs maybe 9 kilos of rare earths to make the magnets that drive the train. If you look at a nuclear submarine, it needs something like a ton of rare earths. So you're going to have to recycle a lot of mobile phones. But saying that, there are companies, and it has been, again, it's just starting to be reported now, because recycling is a great way of helping the environment. Of course it is. So somebody will find a cheap, practical, efficient solution to do that, to take away the reliance upon actually mining these products from out of the ground.
Yeah. Okay, you've given a really nice sort of introduction there of the sort of quantities you need for various different sort of applications. Let's put this in the context of what you're doing at Altona. Now, you're in Mozambique, my understanding is. You're early stage. Give us some more detail about what it is you're doing and the long-term plan you've got. I know you've come to the business relatively recently in terms of the grand scheme of things, but you do have a plan. What is it you're trying to do?
Yeah, we do have a plan. So I've been advising companies for over 20 years, and particularly small companies on the AIM market. The thing that doesn't help shareholders is the paucity of news. Some companies could go 3 months or 6 months without a clear positive update to put out to shareholders. Altona itself has been listed since 2005, and for many years it was trying to extract coal in Australia. That was a very difficult thing to do due to the environmental factors. So when I joined the company in 2019, I made sure that we shut those licenses down. We spent a year trying to find a viable mining sector that would be sustainable, would be long term, but more importantly, would potentially have the ability to be quick to revenue, to help the long suffering shareholders. So rare earths kept popping up again and again. We looked at it and we decided where we wanted to mine. Africa again became a very obvious place due to its exceptional ore deposits, but also the fact that it's still fairly unexplored for rare earths. You know, they've been looking for diamonds and gold and various other metals over the last 100 years, but not rare earths. So we are looking to find assets that have been previously mined. So for example, Monte Moambe, the asset we have, that was mined 12 years ago for fluorite. About 190 holes had been drilled at the time by the people who used to run the license. They didn't find sufficient fluorite deposits to think it was worthwhile, so they left it. But in the data of their analysis of the drill holes, they found traces of rare earth. So that was enough for us to go on and do an initial drill program, which we did last year. So we spent 3 months drilling last year, 40 holes, 3,000 meters. We put the results out yesterday, and there is sufficient indication that this project for a carbonatite complex is in line, if not slightly above average. And we're going to start drilling to produce a resource estimate by the end of this year. But going back to my initial point, what we wanted to do is not just have this one project with great delays between announcements. So the strategy for Altona is to acquire 3 or 4 different projects. We had an ionic clay project, which we were very excited about, but unfortunately we couldn't make the terms work with our local Malawian joint venture partner. So we dropped that about 3 weeks ago. And we're currently in negotiation with 2 or 3 other companies at this time. Again, not just carbonatite, different geologies in different countries in Africa to try spread the investment risk, I suppose. Some will be quick to revenue, but quite small, and some will be longer term to revenue, but once they get there, they'll quite large. And maybe even an asset or 2, which will be so large that for a company the size of Altona, it will be impossible for us to actually mine it. It'll be more of a Glencore situation. So what we'll do is we will prove up the reserve to bankable feasibility study, then look for potential buyers. But that's 4 years in the future.
Yeah, as you said, you're relatively small, but my understanding is you, whilst you came off AIM and you went to a small corner of the stock market, and in fact, if you do a Google search on Google Finance now, you don't see a listing as such, but I know you are listed, as I said, in a small corner. But you do have plans, don't you, this year to come to the main market? Why?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's we started this application to go onto the LSE standard market rather than AIM. We chose that deliberately. Our largest competitor, I suppose, Pensana, they're also on the LSE standard. We just thought it was more of a rational stock market than AIM, which I know in the past has been up and down, and there's so many different external factors that can affect a share price. It doesn't actually reflect accurately what a business is doing. So we thought the standard market would be more of a serious grown-up proposition for us. We're on Aquis. We have been for the last 3 years. We will need to raise, for the projects that we have in mind, probably north of £10 million to get to production. And we can't do that on the current stock market we are. So it has to be one of the LSE markets. And we are in the final weeks, I would like to say, of discussion with the FCA, who are the gatekeeper for allowing companies to list on the LSE. And so hopefully we'll be able to please our shareholders with an announcement saying that all the documentation, all the box ticking has been done, and we'll be able to announce an admission date to the LSE standard segment before the end of April, which is when we're going to be raising the next sort of chunk of cash.
I was going to ask about that, of course. In going to the main market, it gives you a really good big profile, of course. And of course, London is the market where most miners like to raise money anyway. And I guess when it comes to looking at potential off-takers, I guess a main London listing also helps there as well. And what sort of off-takers are you aiming for? I know it's early stage at the moment, but what are your aspirations in that direction?
Well, you're right in the one straight. Having an LSE listing, it opens doors that other stock markets, or certainly being a private company, doesn't have, as well as access to capital. That's why majority of the world comes to London for its listing. Offtake agreements, there are two we can look at. One would be to partner with someone like a large engineering technology company. Those companies, I guess, someone like Siemens, who use rare earths directly. Secondly, you have to look at large commodity traders as well. They will buy the concentrate that we would make, and it would just disappear and sell. But as I said earlier, part of what we're trying to do here is to join the supply chain. So I think it would be remiss of us to simply bag up, the concentrate and sell it, and it end up in a stockpile in China, if we can keep it in Europe or even the US. So we're looking into different places, different markets where we can sell it, with one eye on the shareholder, and also with one eye on the markets that need these products. Yeah,
look, it's a fascinating story. Thanks indeed for giving us an insight into some of the dynamics that are going on. We look forward to hearing more from Altona and, of course, your stock market listing and where it goes from there. But Christian, in the meantime, thank you so much indeed for your time. It's been a pleasure. That's Christian Taylor-Wilkinson. He's the Chief Executive of Altona Rare Earths. For more videos from us here at IGTV, join us on Twitter at IGCom, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.